Good morning, philosophers. Hope you're well today. I'm going to do something different because this book's feeling quite repetitive when he gets into the examples and the musting, the musting and the 3-minute exercises or whatever. So I'm going to hit each chapter, maybe read the opening, and then maybe read the lesson. And then only dive into that chapter if, I don't know, if I want to know more, perhaps. So if you want to read this book, at length, there's a link in the description of the video, and you're welcome to purchase it and dive into it yourself. For me, for my morning think time purposes, I'm not getting a lot out of it right now, so I'm going to, we're gonna do the 10,000 foot view and then move on to the next thing. The other thing I need to mention, and I'm excited about, is today at 2 o'clock Central Time on Disenthrall, I'm going to be interviewing an expert on Stoicism, and I'm going to be talking about some of the great stuff that we can learn from Stoicism and how to improve our lives with it, as well as challenging him on some of the weak spots that we have talked about and identified over the past month and a half of doing these videos and doing these readings. So that should be pretty interesting. I hope you guys tune in and participate in the comments with your questions for the guy. Questions, comments, good stuff like that. All right, let's get into it. Chapter 5, Anger, the High Price of Losing Your Cool. Starts with a quote by Guy Claxton, The Heart of Buddhism. His Holiness the Dalai Lama was asked whether it was ever useful or legitimate to get angry with someone else. He sat in silence for several minutes, exactly like a chess player meditating on the consequences of all the possible moves. And then, having exhausted all the possibilities, he simply said, "No." And then I think the Stoics had it more right, though. Like, if anger is, I don't know, this could be wrong, because I tried and failed. Anger sort of feeds itself. The Stoics believe, feel the anger, experience the anger, but then act in a controlled way. And what if the way that you decide you need to act is by showing anger? Well, maybe that's not acting out of anger or experiencing anger, that's just showing anger. So, anyway, just my thoughts. Okay, so then he goes into a story about a lawyer with a bad marriage. Okay, speeding, we're going to skip some of the stories and just get to sort of the conclusions. So if it's without context of the story, now you know why. A disabling emotion. Anger is not an involuntary emotional response to a specific situation. That is a powerful and strong statement that I believe is true. Anger is not an involuntary emotional response to a specific situation. Anger arises from a philosophy, a way of viewing the world. At its core, anger represents an outlook of grandiosity, self-righteousness, commanding, and condemning. Many mental health professionals disagree with this view, that all kinds of anger are generally bad for you. Most therapists classify anger as appropriate or inappropriate according to context, and they usually argue that when appropriate, it is healthy to express anger, let it out, and unhealthy to suppress anger, bottle it up. Recent research, however, contradicts this popular view and suggests that all anger, expressed or suppressed, is harmful to your health and damaging to your relationships with other people. Among the many difficulties associated with anger are increased likelihood of heart attack, stroke, and hypertension, greater difficulty in solving problems constructively, a tendency for the anger, which may start in one area of your life, to overlap and extend into other areas, preoccupation with thoughts of revenge, adopting an antagonistic attitude which needlessly alienates other people with whom it's advantageous to have cordial dealings, a predisposition to violence, especially child abuse. But doesn't expressing anger help release a lot of pent-up frustration? It's true that an outburst of anger may sometimes momentarily provide relief, but psychological distress often takes its toll on the body, and some preliminary evidence suggests that expressed anger causes more physical damage than suppressed anger. There is, however, a third alternative to suppressing or expressing your anger. Don't make yourself angry in the first place. And I love, how often, how rarely have we heard it phrased that way? If ever. Have you ever heard anyone in your entire life talk about emotions in this way? Don't make yourself angry in the first place. Don't make yourself angry. I think that's critical. The expressive approach implies that anger is something inside you, like a gallbladder. If your gallbladder bothers you, you could have it removed and then it won't bother you anymore. Similarly, if you can get your anger out, it won't be inside you anymore, causing distress. This view is hopelessly mistaken. Anger is not a physical entity. It's a feeling generated by an attitude or belief. You don't free yourself of feelings by expressing the attitudes and beliefs that create them. That usually reaffirms and strengthens those attitudes and thus makes the feeling more likely to return. Consider an opposite sort of feeling, like love, a feeling that we often want to continue. It's clear that the more you express feelings of love, tenderness, and caring, the more loving, tender, and caring you are likely to become. No one would suppose that by expressing such feelings you were letting them out and thus losing them. It's exactly the same with the self-destructive feeling of anger. If you express your anger, you reaffirm and solidify your angry attitude and make it more difficult to dispel. If you refrain from expressing your anger, this may be the first step towards avoiding anger entirely. Let's see, then we get into more stories. Some musts, some 3-minute exercises. Okay, let's see if we got some good stuff here. How to be cool. Dealing with your own anger. Resentment or hostility involves 3 steps. Number 1, first admit that you are making yourself angry. No other person, experience, or situation is. You can recognize that a person, experience, or situation is unpleasant or undesired. That alone doesn't explain or justify your anger. No matter how obnoxious the object of your dislike may be, the anger is your responsibility. It is never warranted by external circumstances. 2. Second, identify the demand you are making, the must or the should you are inventing inside your head, which is leading to your anger about the frustrating person or situation. And 3, finally, question and dispute this demand ad nauseum until it loses all plausibility. Dealing with difficult people. I can already hear some readers objecting. Is Heather supposed to put up with this inconsiderate behavior? Are you telling us we have to be meek and mild? People who try to justify anger usually speak as though the only alternative to anger is to be passively meek and mild. But in fact, other alternatives are available, such as calm assertiveness or reasoned compliance. Here are some examples. A state trooper awarding a speeding ticket is typically neither angry nor passive. He is calm, firm, assertive, tyrannical, assholery. He's an aggressor, a thug, Blue Line Gang cartel member. Sorry. Some of those were my words. A professional boxer is not meek and mild in the ring, but he is generally not angry. He may sometimes calculatedly taunt his opponent if he thinks that the opponent may get angry and thereby become less effective. An army private is rather compliant in the face of her sergeant's commands. It would simply be foolish for her to behave otherwise. For example, to angrily protest, "I'm a sensitive, feeling individual, so consider my uniqueness before ordering me around." A policy of calculated compliance is usually best with most bosses when dealing directly with the IRS or with any other very powerful organization that has the ability to harm you. A policy of calculated compliance is usually best. Maybe. Sometimes. Meekness is one useful strategy. But still, readers may want to challenge my advice to Heather. Surely people like Peter can be made to change their bad habits. Surely Heather has every right to be angry. Are you proposing the otherworldly notion of turning the other cheek? Are we supposed to let people walk all over us and never fight back? At first, all this sounds like a reasonable response. but it frequently serves as a flimsy justification for anger and irrational demanding. Suppose you are confronted by a difficult person. Let's carefully consider some aspects of the problem. It may just be that there really is nothing you can do. Nothing that won't have far more undesirable consequences than putting up with the other person's obnoxious behavior. If there really is nothing you can do, then you had better calmly face that fact. 2. It may be that your only real choice is to leave or stay. If you decide it's best to leave the other person, then why not leave unangrily? When people look back later on the furious rows that occurred at the time a relationship was terminated, they are often glad the relationship was terminated, but they nearly always regret the angry scenes. If you decide to stay, then you accept the probability that he will continue his obnoxious behavior. Either way, anger doesn't help. Either way, anger is causing you additional problems, and either way, you are more likely to make the best decision about staying or leaving if you first get rid of your anger and accept the other person's behavior for the time being. 3. If there is something you can do other than leaving, it will not be helped by being angry, and being angry will probably reduce your effectiveness at doing it. If it's really true, and this is quite exceptional, that showing anger will be effective in getting the other person to do what you want and will not have worse consequences for you, then it's better to keep a cool head and pretend to be angry. Ha! That's what I was just saying about the Stoics. Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess I agree then. 4. If you get rid of your anger and calm down, you can more realistically survey the available options. You can rationally experiment with different tactics for changing the other person. Remember, getting rid of your anger does not mean liking what used to make you angry, nor does it mean being resigned to it. 5. If the other person's undesirable behavior is of long standing, then there's a strong possibility that he will never change. And if he ever does change, it may be slowly, or it may not happen for some years. Even if you hope that he may change significantly in the near future, it would be unwise to assume that he will. 6. Very often, the kind of behavior that flows from anger is almost the worst possible way to get the result you would like. For example, ranting and raving at someone is very rarely an efficacious method for improving their behavior. It usually leads to resistance and resentment in the other person, even if you are also doing something effective to get him to change. Your displays of anger will probably retard his progress. 7. Surprisingly often, angry behavior fuels the other person's unpleasant behavior. You may find that simply because you are calm and reasoned all the time, the other person will spontaneously start to improve. Of course, this may not happen, but it happens often enough to be worth mentioning. 8. Sometimes a consistent display of love and affection, or, in the case of a non-intimate relationship, of amiable respect, is effective in modifying the other person's obnoxious behavior. Angry feelings would almost certainly sabotage that effort. 9. Yes, Heather does have a right to be angry. We all have a perfect right to be foolish in any number of ways. 10. There are some circumstances where turning the other cheek may be an effective method for resolving a problem. It's a bad idea to make turning the other cheek into an absolute principle. But where might it work, and why not try it? Then we get back into stories. Repulsive relatives, 3-minute exercises, and the results of those exercises. All right, well, that's the end of chapter 5. Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot better than reading the long-form deep dive stories. I think I got the gist of his thoughts and comments on anger, so we should be able to blow through the rest of the book pretty quick like that in a way that I feel is going to be more productive for me. I have nothing to think about today. That really bothers me. I don't like that. Why does that bother me? It's like I've grown this expectation of myself that every single day I'll have something wise to think about, or something that I want to improve about myself. And today I find myself coming up completely empty-handed. And I don't like that. And it's probably going to stick in my craw and for the rest of the day. So maybe that's the thing I need to think about. You know, it's not easy to every single day come up with something important to think about. It's really a challenge. I think it's an amazingly healthy challenge. I think everybody should try and do it. It requires reading. Like that's one of the things where, like, if I wasn't doing this reading plus the other reading I do later in the day, if I wasn't consuming good content and spending quiet time thinking about myself to myself, I would not have had a single day. How many of these think times have I done, just for example? Let's say it's 45 now. I don't know what the actual number is, but let's assume that there's been 45 of these things. Precisely 45 out of 45 of the things that I had to think about came from the daily reading and self-work. Like, none of that would have existed without that. So that's important. Today I don't have any. Today, I mean, it depends on the books I'm reading as well. And that's part of the thing. Like, I'm not reading new content right now, really. Like, we're doing the More Equal Animals Let's Read. That's my second reading of that book. So not a lot of sort of new thoughts coming out of it. It's still really good, though. And then I'm reading the 3-Minute Therapy, which is much in line with Stoicism. So not a lot of brand new thoughts there either. Anyway, I guess I'm just rambling now. Guys, 2 o'clock today, Disenthrall. We're going to have a cool interview about Stoicism. And yeah, I'll see you guys then. Have a great day.